Good afternoon. It is 17th of March, Tuesday, and the whole planet is in lockdown. Pandemic times. Kind of feels so strange to be in the middle of a pandemic. I mean, you see the word pandemic and you read the history of previous pandemics that have happened on the planet, and it's only when you really start to correlate what that means to you as a person on planet Earth, either supplies or money or career or, being isolated away from other people or groups of people, or seeing stupidity on social media of people buying toilet roll and taking too much food. But then on the flip side, seeing things like Aldi setting times between 9 and 11 for elderly folk to get their stuff before everybody else. I don't know. It's a super interesting and chaotic time. And the last videos that I were making were about Steam because, as we all know, on the 1st of March or around that sort of time was when this the soft fork happened and the whole hostile takeover of the chain by a big investor. It could have been any big investor, and I kind of want to segue into that a little bit. That it was always going to be a shame that it was Tron, I think, in my mind. Knowing the track record of Tron from previous investments and buying up of software and protocols and companies that didn't have market fit. And Steam, no matter how much people will say, oh, but Steam has this and Steam has that, and it has great dApps and it has people developing, which it does, has lots of those things. I was a moderator for 2 years on one of the dApps on the chain Steam Hunt, even though a lot of the higher up people in the chain will disregard that because A, they didn't make it, and B, they hated it because it was like preciously removing like funds from their chain. It's got some great tech in there, but truly, if it was ever going to be anything world changing, it would have had a great narrative and a perfect market fit, and it simply doesn't have that. But then also it might just be because it's early, because blockchains, are still an early thing for people to process. If there's anything that come out of Steam after being on it for 3 or 4 years, is that you have to be proud of the efforts, even in the middle of a pandemic, of people wanting to fight for decentralization, which was one of the major reasons for me being on there, apart from wanting to see how far I could push the whole idea of posting in a decentralized way on DTube, and I still am. I'm still posting with this video. Also still supporting DTube with an Avalon server, and will continue to do so. And actually, I'm excited about May time when we're launching DTube as the DTC, as a token in its own right. So it's just going to be instead of it being Steam and the Steam token, it'll be like supporting decentralized video through DTube as the DTC. And who knows, there may be other chains that look better, more preferable in the months to come. I'm taking a bit of a back seat from being overly concerned about blockchain right now, because obviously in the middle of this pandemic, there's a lot of mental changes that are going on for everybody, not just myself, but like everybody in the world is opening their eyes potentially for the first time in terms of the time that you have here on planet Earth, the money that you spend, the career that you have, the family that you have, the friends that you keep. And it's one of the reasons why for the last 2 weeks I've just been sitting back and watching what's going on. I personally felt that Steem, the blockchain, not just Steam it, kind of died on March the 1st and March the 2nd. I've been very vocal about the terminology using in the soft fork of reversal. I always felt that was like a bartering chip, and kind of always made me concerned that if you didn't fit the criteria of the people in control of the not only consensus, but people who are easily led by intellectualism, and by intellectualism I mean like intelligence but with the lack of emotion. And so there is a lot of incredibly smart people on the Steem blockchain, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're accommodating to the masses. And so I always worried, and the reason why I never connected with Steemians on that level or dug deeper to have friendships or deeper community ties was that I never saw the heart of Steem. I saw the soul of Steem with the communities and community groups and people who were like had these fragmented little power groups, these little power struggle groups. Might be people who were like into veganism, or it might be people who were like into the actual core technology of blockchains. But I never felt part of it, and because of that, I think that's why I never truly chased the investing in Steem, and that must be incredibly difficult for a lot of people who are invested in Steem. A lot of money in Steem, using Steem as this little, digital wallet purse for their investment. And so I can totally understand where they're at today. And I think in the last week or so, there's been a lot of talk about splintering the chain or hard forking the chain, and I think it's going to be called Hive or something. I don't. I think in the short term that might feel like a win for decentralization, commenting out the hostile takeover elements of somebody with more money and a bigger stick than what they had. But I feel like it will. It's already damaged the reputation. This whole palaver, this whole like situation is already, it was always going to be this way. Justin Sun or some other big investor, somebody who didn't have the same kind of fit to the legacy of the last 3 or 4 years. I think that was it. I think what the community really wanted is they wanted to just evolve their share and gradually move it up. They were happy with the group of people were there. They never really wanted mass adoption. I don't truly believe that the big consensus witnesses and the big shareholders on Steem wanted to have Steem as a market fit. I think Steem it was always a thorn in the side because they had something that they would never have, and I think the soft fork was like a bartering chip. Even though they were right about the hostile takeover, I think a lot of it was also like a submission protocol to blend into our community by supporting what we already have, or you don't fit. And they probably unrealizing it, not realizing it, they did that to a lot of people. A lot of people moved away. A lot of people got intimidated by that and left. I was absolutely mortified and shocked to the way that people treated Exile, who, even though I don't follow him and he doesn't follow me anymore, I still have the utmost respect for him as a person. And to watch people call him traitor and all of these things really exposed the underbelly of Steem for me. That as much as you're fighting for decentralization, there is also a terrible undercurrent there that concerns me about people and how they operate. And I don't know. It's not a nice place to be, to have all of your content on a immutable blockchain and know that it's going to fork into another chain. All our content's probably going to be on this other chain, but then there will be obviously more rules, and I just don't see where it ends up. I just see this group of maybe 200 or 300 people, like, who all get along, who all have a bit of a share, and this echo chamber back and forth. So at that point, it's no different from being on Twitter or any of these other centralized platforms. So this whole notion of, oh, at least we own it, at least it's ours, I get it, but there's also a lack of like emotional intelligence in there for me. It's just like, how are you not just 300 mini versions of Justin Sun that, as your wealth or your share grows, if you're not building things? And don't get me wrong here, like, Aggro could quite easily say, yeah, but I built Splinterlands and I built this Discord and built this and built this and built that, and I respect that. But also at the same time, you got people like OCD and all these other big shareholders that they want to be there, they want to be the number one, or they want to be the biggest thing. And so I don't see the difference between them and Justin Sun, really. Ultimately, like, where you're ending up to, if it's not distributed but it's decentralized, then how is that a lot different from the power players in centralization land? I don't know. I like the idea of having stuff that is ours and we own it, and it's on a chain and it's on hundreds and hundreds of nodes around the world, but I don't know. There's a piece missing for me, and I think even forking off to another chain won't solve any of those fucking problems. I just don't. I don't see it. In fact, right now, I would love to see a blockchain built around the situation we're in with this pandemic from a emotive empathy place, that instead of focusing on the money component, maybe on the timeshare of what we have as human beings, as workers, as time, that we can almost barter. A bit like the way that Karma works, which is another blockchain. They've got an app where you help out inside that blockchain and you earn karma points, a bit like Steam power. And I think they're on an exchange as well. I guess where the problem lies, and always will lie, is the money side of it, and the stake side of it, having more of something than somebody else. And recently, because of all like my videos getting knocked down and like downvoted and stuff by megalomaniac people who've got severe mental health issues, I've been delegating my Steam power out. So I've actually still been earning 12 to 13% on my Steam power, and I can rent that out for like 4 to 6 weeks, and that's been a nice experience. But I think we can do more than that. Like, I think we can delegate into groups of people so that they can build out real world projects that exist outside of the keyboard and mouse or the computer room. And I feel like that's probably what we're going to need more once we come out on the flip side of this, if we still have transportation, if we still have planes flying. It looks very delicate and in the balance right now. I think the world is going to look a lot different afterwards. And so, generating our own power, microgrids for our own power, solar panels and batteries and mesh networks and local, almost going back to local kind of village kind of life, but in a distributed way with 20-25 people. And delegating between those people. I guess I just never found my community, even though I will say like DTube is probably one of my communities because it's just the video component of it. Anyway, I'm just waffling. There's my opinions after a couple of weeks. It's interesting to see where everything went. I think it's unfortunate and upsetting when a big investor or somebody with money and who's very young, I think Justin Sung's only 22, and obviously people will make this about like China and communism and all of those aspects to it, but I think when it comes down to it, his backstory and who he is now as a 22-year-old person on planet Earth, with money, to him it's just a power game. It's almost like I want to take over this so that I can turn it into something else. And that's where the power struggle lies, is because if you have legacy in something, if you've been there from the start and you've been shaping it and curating it and adapting it and discussing it with people who you consider either friends or peers, and then somebody like Justin comes into a bar with a bunch of money and chucks it on the counter and expects you just to all hang out, you're going to get pushback from that, and you're not going to want to have that money invested in it. But the truth of the matter is that's fundamentally one of the biggest things that have impacted me in life, is that you get to a certain point and then there's always this situation that you bump into, like you have to either sell out on your ethics or you just get swept away. So I kind of understand why a lot of people are fighting for decentralization, because it's way more than just a place to post stuff on the web in an immutable way. It's a choice. It's a choice to want to see things different in the world, and I respect that. But I'm also torn by the notion of, do we fall into these apathetic traps of crowdthink or groupthink, where as long as we're all coming up, then anybody lower than that intellectual level that you're not willing to let in then ultimately becomes the enemy. It's just like it's just a weird paradox for me. Maybe I'm still learning, but I feel like I want to go back to the Iron Age right now and just like start slugging it out with a big hammer and a sword, and just like be prepared for the next doom world, whatever that looks like. That's it for the minute. It is St. Paddy's Day on pandemic day, pandemic year. Is 2020 completely fucked now? Like for the rest of the year? I don't know. Is Steem going to be like a blockchain that survives through this? Is it going to be another chain? Do I want to go to the next chain? Do I even care about blockchain technology right now in terms of like what it enables us to do in a world which is rapidly changing? Probably not. It's been really difficult to record courses as well and sit down and do stuff that I know that would help take some people's mind off where they're at right now. You have to remember, a lot of people for the first time are like eyes wide open to this stuff. The bubble that they've been living in has suddenly been lifted. You know, we kind of had that in March, and then we had pandemic. We had all that stuff happen in January where we probably went to World War III. People are dealing with a hell of a lot of stuff for the first time and are opening their eyes and like, what am I doing with this life that I have? Like, why am I spending time over here, debating this? Is that some kind of like debate of the mind, or is it like what I truly believe in my heart? And even if I truly believe in my heart, is it right? It's a constantly evolving power play of the human condition for me. All right, I'm going to drink beer and celebrate St. Patrick's Day because even though I don't know what the hell St. Patrick really did, if it's just a made-up day like Valentine's Day, it's always a good time to drink.
Drifting slowly into an empty space where I can